The cameras flashed. The crowd froze. And just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession.
Oh, an absolute obsession.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join Jordan and Jamie as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today's deep dive is a really good one.
Yeah, today we are exploring a really fascinating, geographical and cultural shift. We're looking into the life Natalie Portman has built in Paris following the highly publicized end of her marriage.
Right, because she didn't just move. She completely reinvented her reality.
Exactly. But we aren't just here to look at one person's life, you know. We're going to look at why this isn't just a Natalie Portman thing. It turns out she is using the exact same playbook that American creatives have used for over 100 years.
It's such a phenomenal pattern to trace, and we have a fantastic stack of sources to guide us today.
We really do.
Yeah, starting with recent celebrity news articles that document her life updates and her recent pregnancy announcement. We're also pulling from this wonderfully in-depth profile from Netta Porter.
Oh, that was a great read.
So good. Plus, a Grazia piece detailing her latest Dior campaign. And to ground all of this, historically a fascinating academic paper exploring the modernist expatriates in 1920s Paris.
So our mission for you, as we take you through this material, is to really unpack the mechanics of the Parisian escape.
Exactly. Like, why Paris?
Right. We want to show you why this specific city offers such a unique sanctuary, how the historical blueprint left behind by writers like Ernest Hemingway perfectly mirrors what is happening today, and, well, ultimately understand the strange paradox of seeking absolute privacy while simultaneously commercializing that very lifestyle.
Which is such a wild contradiction. But to really grasp how that paradox works, we have to start by looking at the reality of the life she is actively choosing to live right now.
Yeah.
And, the intense contrast it presents to her past.
Right. Let's set the scene for where we are in May 2026. Because Natalie Portman has been through a profoundly public and frankly exhausting ordeal.
Exhausting is the word.
Seriously. Her marriage to French choreographer Benjamin Millepied ended, and the divorce was finalized in March 2024. And that separation happened amidst a massive wave of very loud, very intrusive tabloid rumors about an affair.
Which is like a nightmare scenario for anyone in the public eye.
A total nightmare. Now, the traditional Hollywood playbook dictates that when a massive star goes through a public breakup overseas, they immediately retreat to the familiar.
Oh, yeah. They run straight back to L.A.
Exactly. They run back to the heavily fortified gated communities of Los Angeles. They surround themselves with publicists, and they do, aggressive damage control.
But she completely ignored that playbook.
She threw it out the window.
She stayed put in Paris. And the narrative emerging from these recent updates is one of profound, almost defiant renewal. At 44 years old, she is expecting her third child.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, her first with her new partner, the French musician Tanguy Destable.
And the way she speaks about this pregnancy in the sources is striking. She called it a privilege and a miracle.
Right, which isn't just standard PR speak for her.
No, not at all. Because she has a really unique, deeply personal perspective on this. She actually grew up with a father who was a fertility doctor.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So she has explicitly stated how aware she is of the agonizing struggles people face in that realm, which, layers this new chapter with an immense amount of gratitude.
That makes so much sense.
You can really see the manifestation of that piece in how she curates her public image now. Like, she recently dropped an Instagram post simply captioned, "Paris lately."
And the power of that post lies entirely in what was completely absent from the frame.
Zero glamour.
None.
There were no red carpets, no meticulously styled outfits, no makeup artists buzzing around a hotel suite. It was just peaceful, almost mundane snapshots.
Like the river Seine, some quiet museum corners.
Blooming flowers, interesting architecture, and some adorable photos of her dog.
What Portman is doing there is highly strategic, whether it's conscious or not. She has essentially weaponized boredom.
Oh, I love that phrase. Weaponized boredom.
Because think about it. The celebrity tabloid machine runs on a very specific fuel, right? It needs drama, it needs reaction, and a constant feed of highly charged emotional content to survive.
It's a monster that constantly needs to be fed.
Exactly. So by intentionally offering up a feed of calm, everyday architectural shots and dog photos, she actively starves that machine. She is establishing a boundary that the ecosystem of Hollywood rarely, if ever, allows its stars to maintain.
It's like she used the entire city of Paris as a giant do not disturb sign.
That is exactly what it is.
Like, she stepped out of the Hollywood fishbowl where every single tap on the glass is magnified and echoed, and she swam into a sprawling ocean where nobody really cares to tap on the glass in the first place.
That is a perfect visualization of the dynamic. And it brings us to the actual mechanics of why the French capital serves as such an effective shield.
Because it's not just about the flight time.
No, it is not merely about physical distance from Los Angeles. It is about plugging into a deeply ingrained cultural operating system that views privacy very differently. And that's not even the wildest part.
Oh.
Wait until we get to how she's using a 100-year-old blueprint. But before we get there, let's talk about the culture itself.
Yeah, this is where that Natalie Portman profile provides such great insight. Because as Americans, we carry around this pervasive, almost foundational stereotype that Parisians are rude.
Oh, constantly. It's the ultimate cliche.
We expect them to be cold, dismissive, and impatient with outsiders. But Portman completely flips that script. She argues that French culture isn't rude at all. She says it is just extremely specific in both profound and surface-level ways.
Right, because they operate on a culture of distinct, highly enforced social contracts.
Exactly. She gives this wonderful, very telling anecdote about child rearing. She has 2 older kids, Aleph and Amalia, and she notes that when their friends come over to her house in Paris, these kids don't just, run in, drop their backpacks, and raid the pantry.
Like American kids usually do.
Right. They walk up, they look her in the eye, they say, "Bonjour, madame." They give Libby's the traditional cheek kiss. And crucially, before they are allowed to leave, they make it a point to track her down wherever she is in the house, just to say, "Thank you for having me."
Wow. It demonstrates a framework of structured respect that is taught from a very early age.
And the contrast becomes glaring when she travels back to the U.S. She describes the profound culture shock of walking into an American store and realizing that people don't automatically greet everyone when they walk through the door.
Right, which feels so normal to us.
But after acclimating to France, the American lack of formal acknowledgement felt jarring to her. But the ultimate proof of why this culture works for her is the compliment she values most.
Oh, this was fascinating.
She noted that the highest praise you can receive from a local in her Parisian neighborhood is "Elle est très discrète." She is very discreet.
That phrase completely illuminates the difference between how Americans and the French define politeness versus how they define boundaries.
How so?
Well, in Los Angeles, the ultimate cultural currency for a public figure is accessibility. A celebrity is, to some extent, treated as public property.
Oh, 100%.
If a fan approaches you at a restaurant in LA and demands a selfie, the American expectation is that you smile, put down your fork, and oblige. If you refuse, you are immediately branded as the rude one.
Because you broke the unwritten rule that you owe the public your time.
Precisely. In Paris, discretion is the primary cultural currency. The behavior that Americans often perceive as rudeness when they visit Paris is frequently just a strict adherence to those social boundaries.
Interesting.
Parisians are culturally conditioned to fiercely police the boundary between public and private life. So if you are a high-profile figure who has just been burned by intense media scrutiny and you are desperate for privacy...
A culture that actively defends personal boundaries isn't cold.
Exactly. It is the exact healing environment you require.
Okay, I hear that logic, but I feel the need to push back on this narrative just a little bit.
Sure. Go ahead.
Isn't it incredibly easy to view Parisians as perfectly polite and respectful of boundaries when you are an Oscar-winning millionaire living in the most exclusive, affluent neighborhoods in the left bank?
That is a very fair point.
I wonder if she is experiencing the true, gritty reality of everyday Parisian culture, or if she is just existing inside a highly insulated, luxurious bubble where everyone is essentially incentivized to be polite to her.
That is a completely vital distinction to make. Wealth and class provide an immense, undeniable buffer. She is certainly not navigating the crowded, chaotic suburban transit systems during a strike.
Right.
We're dealing with the bureaucratic nightmares of the French administrative state in the same way an average citizen would. Her wealth absolutely buys her physical security and insulation.
Yes, she's definitely insulated.
However, the cultural baseline of discretion, the fundamental idea that you do not aggressively insert yourself into a stranger's personal space or draw unnecessary attention to yourself, does permeate French society across classes in a way that differs starkly from the American cult of celebrity.
So the money buys the fortress.
Yeah.
But the French cultural mindset provides the psychological security she's leaning into.
Exactly. And if you're loving these Hollywood twists and cultural deep dives, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead in this episode.
Yes, definitely hit subscribe. So that psychological security seems to be the key that unlocked a massive shift in how she approaches her career, and honestly, her life as a woman in her 40s.
Oh, absolutely.
Connecting that sense of safety to her newfound freedom brings up one of the best moments in our source material. During the absolute height of her divorce making international headlines, she was attending a fashion show in Paris, and she had this incredible viral encounter with Rihanna outside the venue.
Oh my gosh, yes. It was a fascinating collision of two very different pop culture worlds.
It really was. Rihanna just walks right up to her amidst all the flashing cameras and chaos and tells her point blank that she is one of the hottest bitches in Hollywood forever.
I mean, iconic. Truly iconic.
Portman later reflected on that, saying it was the exact validation she needed to hear in a moment when her personal life felt incredibly difficult. But it also signals this new, wonderfully liberated phase she has entered.
Because she is juggling a staggering amount of responsibility right now.
Oh, a ton. She runs a Paris-based production company called Mountain. Through that, she is actively producing and starring in much darker, more complex, and morally ambiguous projects like May December and Lady in the Lake.
Both incredible, by the way.
So good. Plus, she's shooting global action movies like Fountain of Youth. She's raising her 2 children. She's pregnant with her 3rd.
The sheer volume of output is impressive, but her philosophy on how to manage that workload has radically shifted away from the perfectionism that used to define her.
Yeah, she outlined these 2 new life rules that feel like a breath of fresh air. Rule number 1, which she frequently shares with our cousin, is a quote from the comedian Ali Wong.
Oh, I love this quote.
I don't want to lean in, I want to lie down.
It serves as the ultimate, exhausted rejection of the relentless girl boss hustle culture that defined the last decade.
And rule number 2 is getting deeply, comfortably friendly with imperfection. She says the actual secret to doing it all is being pretty cool with looking at the massive mess of your life and simply saying, I suck at everything.
Which is just so liberating to hear from someone like her.
Right. Plus, she offers a really refreshing perspective on aging. While the Hollywood machine treats getting older like a terminal disease to be fought at all costs, she says aging is really cool.
Because you finally get to experience enduring 20 to 30-year friendships where people have truly proven they will show up for you through the darkest times. The psychological arc we are witnessing here is profound when you consider her background.
Oh, for sure. She started so young.
Exactly. Natalie Portman entered the grueling machinery of the public eye at age 13 with the film Leon, The Professional. From her early adolescence, she was required to perform an exhausting version of perfection.
She had to be the perfect, precocious child star.
Right. Then the perfect, flawless Harvard graduate, and then the perfect, elegant, untouchable leading lady. What we're seeing her do now in Paris is systematically dismantle that need to perform.
She is no longer contorting herself to meet the impossible expectations of the American public.
She found a geographical and cultural environment that finally allowed her to drop the mask.
Think about the immense pressure you put on yourself every single day, trying to optimize your routine or meet everyone's expectations. How incredibly liberating would it be to just look at your endless to-do list, shrug your shoulders, say, I suck at everything, and just go take a nap without a shred of guilt?
It sounds utopian.
It really does. But the academic source we reviewed reveals a fascinating twist. Her strategy of crossing the Atlantic to find peace isn't a modern phenomenon.
Not at all.
Moving to Paris to secure artistic freedom and personal space is actually a century-old American tradition.
It follows the classic, well-documented blueprint of the modernist expatriate. When we examine the 1920s, immediately following the devastation of the First World War, there was a massive influx of American writers, artists, and thinkers relocating to Paris.
We were talking about monumental cultural figures like Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein.
Right. And their underlying motivations mirror the modern search for space. They were fleeing what they viewed as the aggressive standardization of American culture and the suffocating moral conservatism of their homeland.
Because remember, this was the peak era of prohibition in the United States.
Exactly. So they packed their bags, crossed the ocean, and established themselves on the left bank.
But the academic paper brought up this fascinating idea called spatial distance theory.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, how does just changing your zip code and sitting in a different country actually alter how these artists saw the world and created their work?
The mechanism of spatial distance is incredibly powerful. When you physically remove yourself from your home country, you are suddenly stripped of the ambient cultural noise that constantly occupies your brain.
Right, you don't overhear the political arguments on the bus.
You aren't bombarded by the subtle social anxieties of your own culture. Your brain is no longer processing the familiar. For someone like Gertrude Stein, this was a deliberate tool.
She famously held court at 27 Rue de Fleurus, but she actively isolated herself from the French language, didn't she?
Yes, she surrounded herself with people who didn't speak English, arguing that it left her intensely alone with my eyes and my English. She used the foreignness of Paris as a protective wall to insulate her own highly experimental creative process.
And Hemingway seemed to take a completely different approach, like treating the city like it was his own personal muse and territory. He literally wrote in his memoirs, "You belong to me, and all Paris belongs to me, and I belong to this notebook and this pencil."
Hemingway consumed the city, whereas Stein used it as a fortress. But the academic paper heavily emphasizes a massive caveat to this romantic notion of spatial distance.
Well, the privilege aspect.
Yes. This freedom was entirely built on a foundation of intense political and economic privilege. The modernists, the 1920s, loved to publicly perform this identity of the authentic, starving artists suffering for their brilliant craft in freezing Parisian garrets.
But the stark reality was quite different.
Very different. They were living off incredibly favorable post-war exchange rates. The American dollar was so dominant that they could afford to eat indulgent, multi-course meals, drink continuously, and in the case of some privileged American students, even purchase original Picasso paintings with their leftover tuition money.
Okay, that completely reframes the narrative of the lost generation for me.
Right.
Essentially, Ernest Hemingway and Gertrude Stein were the 1920s equivalent of wealthy, modern-day lifestyle influencers.
That is a brutally accurate comparison.
Like, they moved to a country with a much cheaper cost of living, actively pretended to be broke, to cultivate this greedy, authentic bohemian aesthetic, and then wrote books bragging about their incredible lifestyle to all their followers back home.
That is exactly the academic critique. They were engaging in the performance of poverty while enjoying immense economic superiority over the actual French citizens who were desperately struggling to rebuild their lives after a catastrophic war.
Wow.
They claimed the cultural space, defined it entirely on their own terms, and then turned around and sold that romanticized image back to the American public. And later in the episode, we'll talk about the shocking twist nobody saw coming regarding how this exact same thing is happening today.
Yes, stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because this ties directly back to Natalie Portman.
It really does. It brings us to the core paradox of the expatriate. There is a profound, undeniable tension between wanting a fiercely private, authentic life in Paris and simultaneously participating in the commercialization of that exact lifestyle.
It is the ultimate paradox of the sanctuary. The academic text highlights that in the 1920s, the modernists wrote about the magic of Paris with such intense romanticism that they accidentally engineered their own downfall.
Right. They turned the left bank into a massive tourist trap.
Middle-class Americans flooded into the city by the thousands, desperately trying to purchase a piece of that bohemian lifestyle. They wanted to sit in the exact same cafes, drink the exact same absinthe, and, absorb the genius.
To use a modern analogy, it is exactly like a travel influencer finding a pristine, untouched coastal village, broadcasting it to their millions of followers, and inadvertently destroying the very quiet and charm they went there to experience.
They commodified their own sanctuary.
Exactly.
And we see a stunning modern reflection of this commodification in Portman's ongoing work with Dior.
We certainly do.
Let's look at the Grazia article detailing her recent Miss Dior Essence short film. The entire marketing campaign is masterfully built on selling the fantasy of her Parisian life to the consumer.
It is a beautifully constructed, highly effective piece of visual marketing.
The details are just so specific. She meets with Francis Kurkdjian, the legendary perfume creator, and they discuss the architecture of the scent, this sophisticated blend of jasmine and smoky oak moss that gives the perfume its backbone.
But the visual narrative of the film is what really captures the paradox.
Oh, absolutely. It portrays Paris as this hyper-curated, Miss Dior-coded paradise. You watch her wandering effortlessly through picturesque, sun-drenched flower markets,
Browsing the antique green book stalls along the Seine.
stomping around in chic utilitarian knee boots. It is the absolute unadulterated dream of the liberated, romantic, carefree Parisian woman.
And right there lies the friction. We just discussed how she lives a highly guarded, deeply private life.
Right, she relies heavily on French cultural discretion to protect her children and her new relationship from the aggressive glare of the media.
Yet simultaneously, she operates as the global face, actively monetizing the myth of the carefree American in Paris. She utilizes the romantic aesthetic of the city to sell a luxury product to the rest of the world.
It is a fascinating tension between authentic, quiet living and performative commercialism.
It really is.
It's like Paris isn't just a living, breathing city for these artists. It's a high-end green screen.
Oh, a green screen, yes.
They project their deepest psychological needs onto it, whether that is a need for deep healing after a divorce, a need for artistic isolation, or a need for complete personal reinvention. They play out those needs against the backdrop of the cobblestone streets, and then they package that gorgeous cinematic footage and sell it back to us.
It operates as a highly symbiotic relationship. The city offers them an unparalleled shield of discretion and history, and in return, these American icons act as the city's most effective global PR firm.
Continuously refreshing and broadcasting its mythic status for an entirely new generation of dreamers.
It really is a brilliant, self-sustaining system.
So let's bring all of these distinct threads together. We started with Natalie Portman's very quiet, very deliberate post-divorce reinvention away from the Hollywood machine.
We looked at how she is embracing a new baby, a new partner, and a liberating philosophy that totally rejects the burden of perfectionism.
We explored how the strict, boundary-driven, highly specific culture of French society provides the ultimate protective shield for her family.
And then we traced that exact same impulse for spatial distance all the way back to the 1920s, to expatriates like Hemingway and Stein, who essentially invented this enduring myth of the American seeking refuge and inspiration in Paris.
The real takeaway for you listening to this deep dive today is that the underlying impulse driving all of this is entirely deeply relatable.
It really is. I mean, the vast majority of us will never have the resources to move into a historic sunlit apartment on the left bank or buy an entirely new custom Dior wardrobe to signify our personal rebirth.
Definitely not.
But the core desire driving those actions, the need to find a space where we can just be très discrète, where we can step completely away from the suffocating expectations of our peers and drop the exhausting, heavy need to be perfect all the time, that is a universal human need.
We all need a place, a moment, or a boundary where we are allowed to just say, I suck at everything, and lie down without judgment.
We absolutely all need our own version of that sanctuary.
Which leaves us with one final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day.
If Paris is the geographical canvas that American celebrities and writers have used for a century to paint a brand new, unburdened version of themselves, what is your Paris?
Where is that one place, whether it is a physical location you travel to or simply a quiet mental space you retreat to in your own home, where you feel completely free to rewrite your own story, entirely undisturbed by the audience of your past?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.